Many of you guys already know Lee Harris, and if you don't, I am super excited to be the one to introduce you to him. So Lee he calls himself an energy intuitive. He has been really a groundbreaker, I think, in our world as a channel. He shares his energy updates on a monthly basis, and he's written books, which I have read, which I have here with me. And and I feel like he is a really calming and yet extremely perceptive voice for the shift of consciousness that we're going through, for the shift of humanity. So I'm super excited to have him here with me. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you for having me. It's lovely to be with you.
Awesome, thanks. So I want to dive right in because I have so many things I want to ask you about. So and you and we have a lot of things in common actually in terms of our journey and the way that we connect. You do what I would consider to be a form of trance channeling. You let the Z speak through you. But so I totally loved reading your book, which I have here, which people um, uh, may have already seen. It's called the Future Human. And one of the things you talk about in that book that I loved reading about was your experience in Costa Rica, and where you talk about how you had this just all of a sudden like mind altering 17-minute experience. Could you describe the experience for people who haven't read the book?
I was running a workshop. We do an annual retreat called Soul Magic every year. We're about to do one this year in Santa Barbara, and we were in Costa Rica that year, and we had a really shocking event, which was that week one of the participants, the husband of a participant who had come to some of my other retreats, he had a heart attack in the ocean during one of the days off, one of the half days off, and he loved the ocean. They loved swimming. He'd come to the event because his wife had talked about it, and so she wanted to bring him. So it was day 3 or day 4 of the event, and I suddenly get the call, of what's going on, run down to the beach. And there were about 20 of us with his body doing all kinds of things. We had some couple of people doing CPR, Reiki, whatever we could do around his body to try and bring him back, but he wasn't coming back. And it took me about 40 minutes to move from Reiki to suddenly go, hang on a second, I can talk to him. Let me see if I can connect. And he was just saying, "It's beautiful here. No, I'm not coming back. I'm good." And I was emotional, and so I was arguing with him. I was like, "Get back down here. Your wife is
Oh.
here." Da, da. But no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't have it. And the peace and the joy from him was extraordinary. And of course, you're in this jarring experience of, on a human level, we're all in shock and horror. And so this happened on day 3. And at the end of this, he's been taken away by the paramedics. We'd been with his body for about 2 hours
Mm.
in the middle of the day in Costa Rican sun. So those of us who'd been on the beach, you could tell those of us that had been on the beach from the group because we were the sunburnt ones for the next few days. And I was walking over to his wife, who was being comforted by Noah on my team and the owner of the resort. And of course, so much is going through your head so fast. And I think, well, we've got to send everyone home. Of course,
Mm.
that's all we can do. And I go over to her and she says a few things to me, and very wise woman, brilliant woman. And she stuns me when she says, "We're carrying on." And of course, at first you think she's in shock. She's not. She's like, "We're carrying on." And she was determined. So we did. And it was the most life-changing, of course, retreat I'd ever had. The irony for me being, we would take people on hikes and things, and my fear as a retreat leader all those years was, oh God, I hope no one sprains their ankle. Oh God, I hope no one falls and hurts their leg. I never in a million years thought that, anything like that could happen. So it changed me as both a facilitator, a teacher, and just a human. And what was shocking to me was over the next 4 days, we carried on with the work. His wife was in the room. I would spend lunchtime or dinner with her. So we made sure she was never alone unless she wanted to be. Me and one of my team members, we would tag team in the breaks. And so it was a profound experience. But I think the day before we were about to end, I suddenly felt faint in the place where we all eat. And I had that human moment where you're like, oh my God, I can't pass out in the middle of the cafeteria where I've got 88 participants, and they're all chatting. And so I walked to the garden very slowly because I had this feeling go to the garden. And there was this Buddha statue there that had always drawn me every day. And I got to the statue and I literally heard, lie on your back on the grass. And I thought I was going to pass out. Like I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I had to get away from my group. It wasn't, I was sat with my own staff team in a big cafeteria, but something made me go, leave, leave. And I lay on my back, and for about the next 17 minutes, everything disappeared. And at first I was scared. At first I felt fear. And I heard the Buddha saying to me, breathe, you are not going to die, breathe. And of course, we had been deep in some ways I'd been in death energy and rebirth energy for the last few days, between holding a group that had just gone through that. And not everyone had been there, but, quarter of us had. It rippled through the week. And then spending all that time with his wife, who was going through this extraordinary experience, but is so strong. And of course, she had her grief, she had emotion, but she also was so strong. And in that first phase, she was very clear. So everything disappeared. And when I surrendered that, I kept hearing the Buddha going, you aren't going to die, breathe, breathe, quite stern. And I did. And then all of a sudden, for anyone who's had an awakening experience will know, everything, I became the dew on the grass, the leaves that were just above my head, everything, I just became one with everything. God, it was nice. It was heavenly. and then I got brought back. But it was one of the most profound awakenings of my life. And it was November 2019. And the day I left the resort, I was staying on for a few days after this retreat, which is very unusual for me. But I did it to give myself recovery time, because it's a big energy, when you hold, you're the conductor for a group experience for 6 days, you're running a lot through you on behalf of others.
Yes.
So I thought I'd need that 3 day. I thought that will be nice, but no. I needed that 3 days. I must have known. And on the last day I left the resort, I went to the Buddha just to see the Buddha again. And the Buddha had been speaking to me. This was the first time I'd had that experience with a statue. I'd had it with trees. And of course I have it with my guides, but this was the first time a statue had ever come to life for me. And so I would go and see him each day, and he would say different things to me. And I even took Hans Jürgen's wife, Angela, to the Buddha, and she had a conversation with him. But on the last day, he said to me, now your work gets serious. And I found that really strange, because I do not take myself seriously, and I try not to take life too seriously, because I think humor and taking things with a pinch of salt are one of the ways that you can manage this human experience, the density of what we go through. But I was confused, because I'd always taken my work seriously. I'd always taken the responsibility of other people seriously. So I was like, what does that mean? And of course, 3 months later, what happened? We went straight into COVID. And everything went to a new level of, I would say, emergency status on Earth, and a brand new awareness. So, yeah, that's my Costa Rica. In a nutshell, that's what happened. But that forever changed me, forever.
That's amazing. And one of the things I found so interesting about how you mentioned it in the book is that it was in the context that you had this incredible experience. You were connected with everything, and then it ended.
Mm.
So in the aftermath of that, have you ever been able to recreate that experience, or what is there a lasting effect? And how do you make sense of that now?
It's a great question, Anne. So I've had two more experiences like it that weren't. One was as powerful, and one was kind of a smaller version of it. But I have to say that's the most memorable. That's the most memorable, where I have felt. Now I had experienced some things like that with psychedelics in like 2014. In Boulder, there were a group of us that consciously took some mushrooms to have that experience. And of course, that's very shamanic, very healing process. But this was without anything like that. So I I think as you asked me that question, I think some of the layers of my own ego or personality structure or the lessons I was learning up to that point, they kind of got lifted out of me. And I think if we hadn't gone into COVID, I think some of the transformation that I started to actualize in my life in late 2022 and early 2023 would have happened in that following year.
Oh,
But because we went into COVID and my father died very early from COVID, he didn't have it. He was taken to hospital. He fell. No one could go in. 10 days later, he had COVID and he was one of the people put on the ventilators. And so he died in
oh,
hospital.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. On April 20th. So I
Mm.
had the double whammy of I really went into, as I think many of us did, I went into service quite hard that year. And of course, I just went hard into what was needed in the collective. Not saying that's the right choice or the wrong choice. There were some people who didn't and they looked after themselves in a different way. But that's where I went. And I would say that lasted a couple years. And so, yeah, I think it, in a way, it connected something in my work, and I can't even put my finger on it. But something changed from that time onwards. Something changed in me, in the work, and in a way I felt like I got to go to another level. I wasn't asking to, but I got shunted there. It was
Mm.
something that was done to me. I didn't induce it,
Mm.
but it's not lost on me that it was at the end of this monumental retreat.
Yeah, I wonder if being in that energy and having crossed, essentially connected with him on his way, I wonder if that somehow opened the door for you to have that experience. I mean, I'm sure it was always going to happen,
Yeah,
but interesting that what Buddha told you that it was now your work was going to get serious. So
yeah.
fascinating.
And by
So
the way,
I,
I went back to that Buddha in 2023. David Pramal and Miten, wonderful musicians and friends, were doing a retreat, and it was the first retreat I'd given myself in, God, I don't know. I'd done an art retreat 5 years earlier, but I hadn't done a self growth or spirituality retreat for 15. And I
wow.
used to do them all the time as a participant. I loved them. So I went to this one and I went back to see the Buddha. And on day one, I went to see him all eager for a message. And he went, "No, go away. You're not ready." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it was fair enough. I was just going through the process of a divorce, and I'd had a betrayal in my life from a friend. So there was a lot going on in my own life. But a few days later, I went back to him, and then he said, "Okay, now you've calmed down and you're more in the frequency of Costa Rica and this retreat." He said, "Now your job is to bring beauty and joy to the world." And my ego mind immediately said, and this was summer 2023, immediately said, "But what about the suffering?" And he said, "Others will deal with the suffering now.
Mm.
Others will tend to and take care of the suffering. You've done that. Now your focus is creating joy and beauty for the world." And I honestly don't think I've done that yet. I think I've made a lot of headway,
Yeah.
but I'm not fully there yet. But I
Mhm.
feel like the last 3 years I've been kind of reforging my own path, my own work in the world, my own personal life to allow much more of that in. And I have a feeling it will take me another 2 to 3 years to kind of let that arc kind of complete and fully show up in the world in a bigger way.
I love that. Wow. Well, I'll be anxious to see, or not anxious. I'll be happily waiting
Mm.
to see how
Well,
that
thanks.
does show up. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and part of what it brings up for me as you tell the story is I think it helps us to set expectations about awakening, and that you had this incredible opening experience. And now it's even now you're still waiting for the unfold. It's not like you went and then you just stayed there. It wasn't like 1 minute someone flipped the light switch and all of a sudden it was Lee 5.0. It was like, here's this incredible taste. And now, like, it makes me think of Richard Rudd's story. If you know him, he
Yeah,
had
I
this,
do know Richard. Yeah.
yeah, this crazy moment or time period, and then it stopped. And then he had this 20 years to unpack it. I think that people, I think, put a lot of pressure on themselves that they are supposed to be a certain thing or achieve a certain thing. And I think, like even once you get there, maybe it's not all or nothing. Maybe it's a thing where we go in and out and in and out and in and out. Does that make sense?
I love that you bring this up. It completely makes sense. And this is why I think when you go to a spiritual workshop or an event, you can get what we call the workshop high when you
Yeah,
leave.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you go, especially if you're seasoned and you go to lots of workshops, you can also have the workshop that's not so fun. You know,
Right.
where you're like, oh, I went in thinking this one's going to be euphoric and lovely, but my God, I had to face some shit. This is not what I thought I was signing up for. You know, I attended so many self-growth retreats that I
Oh,
learned that, you know, generally
oh,
they'd be great for me. But every now and then I'd get one where I was like, oh, okay, this one wasn't as fun or as, you know, happy or as but I think
yes.
that workshop high, there's often then a fear, and this I think parallels what you're saying with awakening. There's then a fear that, oh God, I'm going to lose it.
Yes.
Well, we will in a way.
Yeah.
And I think what we have to remember is it's not that we lose that state, it's that we've just set a new high in our
Yeah.
awareness, in our consciousness. Now we're going to come back down into our life and our grounded body. The high is not going away, but it's going to take time to filter through your veins and
Yes.
filter out into your life. So I feel for me, my own awakening journey has been these big, expansive moments, sometimes subtle, expansive moments. And
Yeah.
at this point, you know, I'm 50 now and I've been into self growth and spirituality since I was 16. So
Yes.
I'm now used to it. I'm now like, oh, this is a beautifully expansive period. Don't panic if it, you know,
Yes.
if you have to now go back and what my guides call clean up the basement. They
Yeah.
say whenever we set a new high benchmark for ourselves, we then get to come back down into the body and run that new benchmark through all your patterns. And most of them will be fine, but you might hit one that's like, oh, this is, oh yeah, oh wow, I've still got some people pleasing going on with this relationship in my life. And it's not their fault, it's mine. But
Yeah.
now I'm going to have to clean that up if I really want to live by this new declaration I just made in that workshop. I'm going to have really balanced relationships. So it's like, okay, then let's clean the house. So I
Right.
think, yeah, and like you, I think I used to have an illusion when I was in my early 20s that I was going to attain this state of enlightenment that would stay forever. And that
Yeah.
hasn't been my path. My path is one foot on the ground, one foot in the sky, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is helpful to talk about and to bring up for people that, and I think it also is because I think sometimes when you have those incredible states, if you're lucky enough to have an experience like you did, then there can be a dreamlike quality that did it happen, you know? And if you come out, like I've had a couple really crazy telepathic experiences recently, and you come away from it and it's like, did I imagine that? You know, and so I think it's if we have this understanding of how it happens, that like for telepathy, like I've had like I all my life I had just only a few experiences, and in the last year I've had like five or six extremely pronounced, unmistakable moments of like where yes, I was absolutely in a telepathic conversation, and but then afterwards I can't recreate it. And so, and I think this might be how our ascension goes, is a little bit like, you know, like that experience where we are two steps forward, you know, one step back. I mean, that's a guess, but that's certainly how it's unfolding for me right now. How about you?
Well, I love that example you gave because I don't know if you find this, Anne, or anyone listening or watching. What I have learned to understand is who I am today and how I operate on a sensory and an intuitive level.
Yeah.
This level of normal that I'm now living, if 15 or even 10 years ago me, and maybe even, you know, 7 years ago me could see me today, I wouldn't understand. There would
Yes.
be layers of my experience that I wouldn't be able to embody 7 or
Yeah.
10 years ago. So I also think it's that what we're actually doing is reclaiming our sensory system
Yeah.
because I'm sure you're similar to me. I maintain that we're all intuitive and we're all sensitive. To what degree depends on your life path, how important those areas of life are to you or aren't. But we were all trained that these things don't exist, or they're blasphemous, or they're not allowed, or that you're
Yeah.
delusional. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the time we're working against that programming. We're working against the part of our mind that goes, well, could this be real? And then
Right.
you meet other people who also have similar experiences, and that helps validate. And then you have more and more of them. And I think the proof is always in how useful are they. You know, it's one thing to be having wild telepathic experiences that aren't really helping you or other people on the ground.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
you can start synthesizing those things into your daily life, what I've experienced is life becomes a bit more magical more of the time. That doesn't mean there aren't challenging days, things that break your heart, you know, because we're here to kind of go through all the stuff that we go through. And this is a very dense planet. But the more you can tap into the dimensions that are less dense, and the more you start to normalize those, you start to slowly but surely leave living in that density in a way that you sometimes don't even notice your progress, which is why I always say to people at my events or online, don't get too bought into, well, this is what I need to fix next.
Right.
Unless you're equally going, let me look at my last 5 years and see the progress I've made, because it's really important to
Mm.
see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. To celebrate that. I mean, that is something that my guides had to work with me on was not good at celebrating. And
Mm,
I didn't really even feel, and celebrating your wins. And I didn't understand the value in that, how it opens you up, taking that moment when you say, okay, yes, I'm going to see these are things I have to work on, but can I also pause and reflect and sit in the space of my own completion? And be in that state of really, it is a state of completion where you sort of set everything down, and then that's where your heart opens and you begin to formulate a new thing that comes from the heart space, from that. Rather than striving, it comes from the sense of I am all that I need. It's a really different vibe.
I love that.
So yeah, so I've been working on that. I'm not awesome at it yet. I'm
Yeah.
working on celebrating.
But isn't it amazing how when you first get the awareness of an area that you can start to practice, lean into, or include in your life that you previously
Yeah.
didn't, I think that's
Hmm.
all you need. All you need
Yeah.
is the awareness, and if catching any times you're being harsh on yourself or judgmental, and
Yeah.
then it will just naturally, you'll start to include it. You'll start to include it, and the more you include it, the more it will normalize.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. So, okay, so I did write some questions. I'm just like enjoying talking to you, but I
Yeah,
did
yeah, yeah.
actually write down some questions as well. So, one of them was you mentioned in your recent message that 2028 energy is calling to us and that it's birthing energy. And I hadn't heard you talk about that before. So, I'm wondering, what are you anticipating in 2028? What about specifically 2028 is calling to us?
Yeah, great. And I will say to you that that was the first time I'd ever heard it. So I recorded the energy update. Yeah, we're recording a little ahead of when this goes out, I guess. But I normally record my energy updates about 6 or 7 days before they broadcast live on YouTube, so that my team can do all the things they do to get it ready. And I remember that day receiving that theme, and the theme was that we are already called 2028 energy is now active. 2028 energy is active in quite a number of us right now. It won't completely make sense, but it is a birthing energy, meaning there is a bridge we have to cross in 2026 and 2027 energetically. Like any intuitive, I'm not the kind of intuitive that can say, well, in January, the government's going to shut down and then blah,
Right.
I don't get the pinpoints. I get the energetics. There are other intuitives or psychics who maybe do get the pinpoints. But for me, it's more about what are we moving through energetically and how might that show up. So the birthing energy of 2028 is something that will now be active in any of us who have learnt to be present to what's going on right now as much as we need to, either for our own learning or to support others, but not dragged down by it. So there is an understandable tendency in the world right now, particularly if you're at a different phase of your awakening, to just feel heartbroken, confused, disoriented by what you see going on the planet. And as I think many of us have gone through at different stages, you can get into a bit of a doom loop. You know, it can
Mm,
look hopeless. It can look And I think it's valid sometimes to go through those feelings, because you go through those feelings and then you come out the other side and you go, oh, I'm still alive. These people are still alive. Oh, there are horrible things going on in certain areas of the world, but that's not the story everywhere.
Right.
We're not all in the same story across the world. And those of us who are, resourced energetically, we have a certain amount of freedom that perhaps other people don't. Whatever it is that we can offer or give or bring, that's what we're here to do. So no matter what's going on in the outside world, what did you yourself come here to bring or birth? That's where I always go back to. If ever I get a little off kilter in myself, I'm reminded of whether it's the apocalypse or
Yeah.
heaven on earth, the job is the same. You're here to, as you do your own healing, yes, that's the personal journey. But I know my work is to ground and support consciousness and to support people's journey with that. And that's my specific role or job or little area of this big tapestry that we're all a part of. So the 2028 energy now will be very active in that there are people on the planet right now who are birthing things for our future that we can't even see, don't even know, but they are going to be able to come in from 2028 and beyond when we're in a very different time. And I know Pam Gregory, our friend, is how you and I got connected. And when Pam and I did our annual video for the year, which I think we did back in January and it's on our YouTube channels, I knew that the second half of this year, Pam talked about it astrologically, I just got the energy side of it, was going to be tough. Like the
Yeah.
second half of the year, I was like, ooh, everything ramps up in the second half of the year. And I think much of that will carry through at least the first half and perhaps the later part of 27 too. But there is a breakthrough that comes in 2028. And I think we are all in such different dimensions in the world. Anyone watching or listening, you might be living in a house or an apartment, and through the wall, your neighbor could be having the best day on earth that they've ever had. You might be suffering, but they can be having the best day, and we're that close to each other in these different dimensions of life. So the 2028 dimension has a lot more progressive energy to it. It has a radical energy to it. Like, I don't quite know what's going to happen in the world, but it feels a little wilder and a little less organized, this 2028 energy, which tells me there will be things outside the mainstream control or the mainstream control grid that will
Yeah.
be able to birth in a freer way in 2028 than perhaps they are now. But they're
Mm.
already here. They're already in the people that we're living with. The energy is there. So the message in this month's energy update that I received was 2028 energy is already at work, and many of us are catching it now and it's activating us. So it has more positivity to it than perhaps we've experienced the first half of this year, but it will be catching fire in those who are ready, and particularly in those who've gone through quite a purge. Whether you've been purging for 6 months or 2 years, if you've gone through a lot of release, a lot of letting go, a lot of feeling like you're having to tidy all the cupboards in your house rather than have a party,
Yeah.
now you, despite what's going on in the outside world, you yourself will start to head towards your next level of life. So that was what that message was referring to.
Isn't that exciting? So,
Hmm.
so if you had to sort of put it in a nutshell, it sounds like you are feeling 2028 as being more outside of bounds, I guess.
Yes,
Would you
not
say?
looking like this, not looking like this at all. And it's interesting because we met when I was on my North America tour, and it was 5 weeks long, and I did 16 3.5 hour shows, workshops, experiences, whatever we call it. And I definitely had to. I took a few weeks off, pretty much most of 3 weeks off from
Right.
work, and I needed to unravel. Like, I needed to go through my own process of, after all those airports, all those hotels, all those experiences across North America. I kind of felt like I went into a spin cycle. You know how you do you can go through
Mhm.
that for a week or two, where nothing quite makes sense in your psyche, but you can feel that certain things are spinning. And yeah, you can be functional, but you're also like, whoa, something's going on in the background here. And as I came out of it, after about 3 weeks, I suddenly felt very galvanized and very reset in a way that I wouldn't have expected to 2 weeks earlier. You know, I was pretty surrendered. I was like, okay, this might just be what I'm
Yeah.
going through. But no, I came out of it really, and I was like, oh, this feels different. And to me, that felt like a new level of strength. But the only way I got there was to explore everything that didn't feel like strength for a few weeks. And I think
Mm.
I was really working collective energy through my body, especially
Yes.
having traveled to 16 different places in North America in 5 weeks.
Yes.
You know, I was very aware it had really immersed me in collective energy in many different locations.
Do you know, I love what you just said, and it brings me back to the conversation we started, or one of the earlier parts of our conversation, where you said that you became all of a sudden aware of everything in your body that was not that. And
Mm,
we were talking before about these experiences, when you have these experiences where all of a sudden you touch a higher level of consciousness, and then you come back down again. And boy, is that the truth in terms of how I have experienced it, is that when I've had those moments when I've hit a high and then settled back into where I am, I all of a sudden the places where I'm out of resonance with that. And it even happens like if I have in a dream state, where I'm in a dream state and I experience something more fluid, or something where I'm embodying what I'm reaching for. And then I wake up and I can all of a sudden, because I have that new template, I can feel where I'm not in alignment with that. And it becomes so much easier for me to face those parts of me that are still unruly. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
Is that what you were saying? Because when you said that, it just like a bell went off in my head. It's like, yes, that's exactly, I think, maybe
Yes.
why we have these experiences.
And I don't know how it's been for you, Anne, but one of my biggest learning lessons has been to surrender to those messier moments. I used to fight them, I used to resist them, I used to think, well, this isn't fun, you know, this is wrong. And you know, it's taken me a long time to have trained myself when they hit, even if they feel a little unpleasant at the time, to go, oh, okay, I have to surrender to this and I have to
Yes.
let this work its way through me. And when I surrender, it will be faster. It doesn't mean don't get support. It doesn't mean don't use the things that might help you navigate it. You don't
Yeah.
always have to, you know, white knuckle it by yourself. Sometimes you do, and you choose to do that for good reason. And other times you go, no, I am going to put that soothing, healing music on. I must remember to put some incense on. And yes, I am going to take a shower because it will. I can support myself while I go through this. I don't have to
Reach for
neglect
the
myself.
Haagen-Dazs.
But I
Yes.
also have to, yeah, sometimes Netflix, you know, whatever works for you. Don't judge yourself or what you might need to support you when you're in one of those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I want to leave space for, I know we're going to have a quick visit with the Z's. Is now a good time?
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm just going to grab a little. Okay. I'll have a quick drink.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Ha. Librarians. That is what many of you in this community are. So, Anne, you have gathered a community of cosmic librarians. They are attracted to that aspect of you. For you are able to tap into many different dimensions, many different doorways, many different planetary systems, and many different historical timelines. So, in that sense, one of your greatest powers or gifts is the part of you that has access to the library of consciousness historically and also in the future. You use this to be a journalist of the present, meaning you will speak to the moment. You will speak to the waves that are happening on Earth. You will speak to what people might be experiencing. And those who resonate with you do so for a couple of reasons. Some of them come to you because they like the medicine you offer and it helps soothe them or helps them integrate or understand what they are going through. But many of them are here because they recognize you from other times, and they also recognize the imprint in you of being a consciousness librarian, a cosmic librarian. You have access to the multitude, and they themselves understand the multitude. Each human is wired a little differently when it comes to the way they connect, and this is usually dictated by lessons needed to be learned in this life, coupled with past life events, past life experiences. So those who are attracted to you hold a wide space, meaning you hold very little judgment, Anne, over individual paths. This allows you to access a depth of love that people feel, but that they also resonate with within themselves. You do not spend much time chastising the path of others. There are those who do that, and in their resistance to a path they believe is not correct, they are using that resistance to deepen their faith in a path they do believe is correct. But that is not a game that you or any of your community are interested in playing. That is a game from a different planetary system, and one that we will say infiltrated Earth a very long time ago and seeded the consciousness of duality. You are here for the consciousness of multidimensionality and also for cosmic consciousness. It's one of the reasons that you and Lee resonate with each other, for cosmic consciousness is part of his job on Earth and part of the work that we do with him. So why is any of this important? Well, because all of you came here to seed consciousness on Earth. Yes, you have your own human experiences. You try on the clothing of being human, you try on the identity of being human, you walk into family lines, genetic lines, that you have elected to try on for size or reunite with if certain souls that you have known in other times, on other planes, are going to be in that family or genetic line. But then, once you have dealt with your own personal clearing and healing, which of course is ongoing, but for most of you, you are no longer dealing with what we would call the big wounds or shadows. Instead, you are now having to keep yourself clear and clean of the debris that is coming off the collective. So the shadow is being released all of the time by humans. And those of you who are sensitive, awake, and available for energy, you have to clear these shadows off you as you imbibe or become affected by them. But you are all here on behalf of love. You are here on behalf of what we would call the love of cosmic consciousness. Not an earthbound love or a love that is defined by a set of rules. The love that is broader than most love that is spoken about on earth. The love of the cosmos and how that holds all of you. For even though you are, many of you, focused on earth, understandably, for that is the gravity belt you live upon right now, you are actually held in cosmic consciousness. It's why many of you weep when you contact that again in your energy field, your awareness, your mind, your heart, and then have to return to these earthly bodies, these earthly lives. But remember, the earth is an illusion. The earth is holographic. Now, we are not saying that the things that happen on the planet are not real to some degree or that they do not affect you. We are not saying live in a way that you would refer to as bypassing the truth or life, but we are reminding you that it is a holographic reality. So as you yourself let go of the density of duality, the density of human wounding, the human pain that you have existed into, the human suffering, you start to live in a more holographic way. You start to float through life more than you used to. Now, maintaining that float is quite hard for some of you because there are many in this group who are very good at floating, but still working on holding the strength of your core when you are standing in front of a more dense person than yourself. That is still an art that many of you are working on, but you will achieve it. And it's not about meeting them where they are at. It's about holding your frequency despite what they are broadcasting in your direction or trying to draw you into. You will not be drawn into the frequency of others. I will not be drawn into the frequency of others. I will not be drawn into the frequency of others. You may choose to engage or connect with others. Yes, that is different. But being drawn into the frequency of another is when you drop your frequency because you are invited to meet someone where they are, but they cannot reach where you are. This is an area of refinement that many of you are working on right now. And in fact, Anne, it is a big part of your work right now that you are both discovering, studying, and delivering to others. So, with all of that said, Anne, do you have any questions for us?
Oh gosh, I have more than you want to answer, depending on how Lee is feeling. If he feels all right, I do have a question or two, if his energy is good.
He is good. He is better than he realizes.
Oh, wonderful. So, one of the questions I had in The Future Human, you mentioned that you thought that humans were extraordinary works of art in motion. And I wondered what about humans is interesting to you?
Well, the fact that you are in these biological vehicles, as it were, and yet never before have humans been this advanced en masse. There have been times and periods of history where you were more advanced as a civilization, but you were far fewer in number. And we will say this to you, knowing that some of you will be scratching your heads, saying, but we do not look very advanced as a civilization. And we will say, no, your current system of organization and rule on Earth is not advanced, nor is it trying to allow you to be advanced. But the consciousness of humans and the amount of contact that humans are now having with the other side, or spirit, or the cosmos, whatever you want to refer to it as, is stronger than ever. You have become more magnetic as beings of consciousness, which is also why your systems are being so disrupted, and why many of your, we will say, shadow power on the planet is struggling to keep control and take a deeper attempt at control in the coming years. That is what you are seeing play out right now, and that is what you are going to see continue to be challenged and challenging in the coming few years. So we say you are extraordinary works of art because the consciousness that humans were always designed to be allowed to have is beginning to return. You are extraordinary beings in that you are able to take all of the lives you have lived. Some of you have lived many lives, and to start to bring more of the dimensions of existence outside Earth upon to the Earth. For the longest time, the Earth has been, we will say, some use the term quarantined, we would say restricted from having contact with its galactic origins. That is no longer able to hold the way it did and was able to hold. So, you are extraordinary works of art because your cosmic consciousness and energy fields are beginning to vibrate at a higher rate than ever before and bring through, we will call it, more universal energy to this beautiful and powerful planet that has been tampered with and, we will say, deliberately diminished and interfered with by a small number on the planet who are the ones who are continually being exposed right now. And as more and more exposure of the corruption on the planet continues to be revealed, they will lose their power. That is why we say you are extraordinary works of art.
Beautiful and very encouraging. I also noticed that you mentioned that in the book that this is an opportunity that we are in right now to see if technology can be allowed to flourish and live in harmony. So to fully flourish. And I'm wondering that is that a problem in the universe? Is it a problem when technology becomes like everywhere else other than Earth, when technology becomes too strong?
When technology has been used as a weapon, as it has been galactically over the years, yes, civilizations fall. And it is the way that technology has been used, designed to create the fall of that civilization. So technology can be used as a tool of war. And war is about wiping out one civilization because they are a threat to your power or supremacy. So your journey in the coming years is going to be to see not so much can you stop the rapid spread of technology, but can the evolution of this planet coincide with the removal of some of the, we will say, shadow leadership on the planet at this point from being in control of that technology? That is the dance that you are all in right now. But we will say this, for we understand there are many philosophical debates right now on Earth, understandably, about the health or harm of technology. And we will say that it is because of your technology at this moment in time that consciousness has been allowed to spread. Also, that justice has been allowed to be revealed in ways that it previously was more concealed. So, as with many things on Earth, yes, there are some problems that you need to be mindful of. And of course, humans are not ready to be fully technological, nor should they ever become that. There is a push to, let's say, wipe out the soul of humanity and instead bring human bodies in line with technology. And that is not a goal that any of you want. We are not saying there cannot be a symbiotic relationship between technology and humans, but it needs to be symbiotic. It should not be a dictatorship, which is how it is currently being put into place. But it's not the technology that's the problem. It's those in charge of certain aspects of your planet who are running the planet like a dictatorship. And now people are beginning to see the elements of that dictatorship. Whereas before, certain comforts, certain distractions, and certain aspects of life would keep you blind to the fact that it was such a thing.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So you, speaking of sort of these hidden power structures and systems that are limiting human potential, you mentioned in the book that innovation would be our best weapon against those old systems. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, the innovation is coming from humans. It will come in two different ways. Right now, you have humans who are supported by the system who are able to make great waves and take many with them. They are initiating consciousness in others. They are creating new ways outside the, again, we will call it corrupt side of your systems on Earth. They are initiating and creating new ways and systems that can live within right now the system, but are actually developing consciousness that will go on to bloom once the system no longer has hold. But equally, it will be necessity that will bring about innovation, as is the way with much creativity and creational energy on Earth. When you are, we will call it, pushed into a corner, backed into a corner, the human ability to innovate and the connection from spirit that will help you in those times, that will plant ideas in your mind if you are not someone who is open to your intuition, or if you are intuitive, you can ask spirit, your guides, your angels for help. You will be able to, in those moments where you need to innovate a solution because of necessity, you will innovate it. So that is why we say the years to come are going to be a little wild. And when we use that word wild, many people go to fear. They think that means distress, societal disrepair, societal breakdown in a way that is dramatic, challenging, difficult. You have to be careful of those narratives. We are not saying there cannot be aspects of that, but there are many things that you have been told are societal breakdown in recent years that in fact have been fabricated in order to get you to comply with the rules that certain groups would want you to follow. So, as with everything, run everything through your intuitive filter, your discernment. See what feels true to you and what does not. But innovation will come through you and through many on the planet who are here to build a world of new consciousness, not to continue to support or live in fear of the world that you are currently in that was built on old consciousness. But even in that world you are in, consciousness always finds a way. It cannot be stopped.
Love that. So I've one more question here for you, if you have time.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm wondering, another thing you mentioned in the book, The Future Human, is that right now sexual connection among humans is mostly misunderstood by us. You said that it's supposed to be an act that unlocks and unleashes consciousness. And eventually that the act, it's so much more about a means to an end that eventually the act may even become irrelevant, that the real point of it is to unleash consciousness. And so I'm wondering, do you have any advice for how humans can better use their sexuality to unlock consciousness?
Yes, the way that you have been shown sexuality and that you are repeatedly shown sexuality in your society is objectification, power struggle, or power over. You are not shown the truth of sexuality on your planet, which is it is a tantric act of love between two individuals and it moves energy. It is no different to, we will say, a very amplified and intimate version of what you might call a Reiki healing session. The act of lovemaking between individuals, when it is coming from a place of love and honoring and connecting, it is opening the chakras of the other being in connection with your own and moving energy between you. So, we would argue, and we do not wish to alarm anybody here, but we would argue that you make love with each other when you speak to each other, when you connect with each other, when you laugh with each other, when you have a nice time with someone and you feel a connection with them. Of course, it doesn't mean you are having sexual relations with them, but your energies are merging and meshing. So when beings who love one another and are coming from a place of love for the body of another, the soul of another, the energy of another, that is a doorway that you can unlock that is magical. And for example, in that moment, you do not need to be vigorous. Two beings, or perhaps more if there are more involved, can lie with their bodies pressed against each other, doing very little, feeling all of this energy movement going through them. And that is the power of Tantra. But the way that so many of you have been taught about sexual relations is, it is just for procreation. Well, if that were the case, people would only do it once in order to conceive a child, and that's not the drive of humans. So sexuality has been used to control and to bring shame and control upon people. If sexuality had been explained or expressed to you the way it is truly meant to be shown, you would see it as a very powerful healing gateway between individuals. And once you access that level of sexuality, the old version of sexuality becomes very unappealing to you. It is a little bit like when you graduate from watching a movie or television show that will have lots of violence and chasing and loud music and loud flashes. And for a while that is stimulating to you and it lights something up inside you. But then when you start to experience something else, and you start to have that same level of opening or reaction without all of that intense stimulation in the old style, you tend to not be able to enjoy the old style in the same way. So that is what we mean by conscious sexuality. It is an act of healing. It is an act of love. And yes, the more people reach those levels of that experience, their hunger for the old style of sexuality that you are sold will go away. And so will the need of some to objectify themselves, to be seen as valuable under the sexual gaze. So, for example, The way that your patriarchal system was set up for the longest time was to make women, certainly in Western culture, sexual objectification beings. And many women would think that their value was their beauty and their desirability for that act. But of course, that's an illusion. Anyone who has ever lived in a family home knows that that is not the value of a woman. And yet society has allowed this to perpetuate. So demeaning women, inviting women to demean themselves, and demeaning the men who are never quite getting beyond the first level of attraction. So it has all been woven into your society in order to keep you all stuck at that level. But there are many pioneers and teachers and voices who have gone beyond that and who are right now breaking that down with their words, with what they are sharing, teaching, telling their friends, and through their experiences.
Beautiful. So if people were looking for resources, they might look under the categories of Tantra or something of that nature.
Yes, but as with any area, again, you have to be mindful you find the right resonance. In any field of work on earth, you will find those that you resonate with. You will find those who are doing it through their heart, and you will find those who are doing it through their ego, their wound, their shadow. So this is why you have to know yourself so that you know who and what you need. And sometimes you only learn that through engaging with the wrong people for a while to learn what is good for you and what is going to be wrong for you and your value system.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us and sharing your channel messages. We appreciate it very much.
Our pleasure to be with you in the room of frequency that you and your community hold.
Welcome back.
Hi.
You're so smooth when you come back. I always feel like I've been hit by a 2x4 when I enter back in again.
I didn't used to be. I didn't used to be, but how long has it been personally for me now? It's been 27 years with my
Yeah.
guides, and
Yeah.
publicly it's been 22.
That's
So yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's so cool. So,
yeah.
okay, so we had a great conversation. I don't know if you remember, if you hear
I
what they
do.
are
I
saying.
do. I get to hear everything. I don't remember every
Yeah.
word or detail, but I get to hear
Yeah.
everything as it's happening.
Yeah. So I did want to end with one more conversation just to bring you back into the body and to
Yeah.
talk about more mundane things. Is I think it would be helpful for people to share, if you shared, is there anything that you are doing right now in terms of daily practices or anything like that that you are finding particularly helpful? Are there any
Hmm.
changes that you've made or things that you're doing lifestyle wise, daily practice, anything of that nature that seems to be making a difference for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my practices is cleanses, and it's
Yeah.
not for everybody. So I'm not saying everyone should do this, but one of the ways I can reset myself is to do a juice cleanse. And
Mm.
these days I don't just do juice. I normally add a protein milk, like an almond milk, nut milk, in the morning and at night, because I also train. Physical training and physical fitness is something I really walked towards in the last 8 years because I I needed my sensitivity to be supported by strength, and
Mhm.
so the discipline of that. So that's why I always add a little protein in my juice cleanses. So I'm what day is today? Today I'm on day 11 of no solid food.
Oh my gosh.
And it really works for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but having that just nutrition come through liquid or some blended, nut milk with some protein. I have like a vegan protein powder I use too. That really helps me to reset my energy. So after the 3 weeks of the tour, the cleanse, I was like, okay, I'm going back to work. I have things coming up and I just want to clear myself. But I'm very gentle in the way I do it. I'll go into it not knowing whether I'm going to do 2 or 3 days, 2 weeks. The longest I've done is 30 days. I'm not doing that many these days. It's normally up to a couple of weeks. So that's kind of a good reset for me. But on a day-to-day level, I go to fitness, so moving my body 6 days a week. I also pay attention to what I eat, and I notice when I eat more of the things that are, a bit more old style, like the kind of food I used to eat without ever giving it a second thought, like 10, 15 years ago. If I have that for too many days in a row, or I start to adopt my diet in that way, I notice my vibration just drops a bit. So it's okay to, do some occasional things. But for me, it's really, these days, it's keeping an eye on my pace. There was a time when I would power through, like, the masculine energy of power through. I'll just keep going. Whoa, it's a stressful time. I'll just keep going. But I refuse to do that these days. So I am someone who I kind of fairly constantly produce, fairly constantly work. And that seems to be true of my nature. But I have learned to, take a Sunday completely off. I don't rush to get back to everybody if I'm not ready. The old
Yeah.
me would have thought, oh God, I need to reply to that text message that I got yesterday or 2 days ago. Now I'm like, no, I put their name down on a list. I'm like, this is not the right time for me to engage. And I might write to them in 4 days and I just go, sorry, I was, immersed, and thanks for your message. And I also learned that the people who give you a hard time about that are not people you want to keep in your life.
Yeah.
Because anyone who's got to hook into you and your schedule, that's not a game that many of us can play anymore. So I try and keep my pace and, go out into nature. In my case, I have a garden, which I'm very grateful for. So I go to the garden, and water is one of my things, whether it's a shower or the hot tub that I'm very grateful to have, that I can go
Yeah.
and sit in. I love sitting in like a warm, not a hot tub, but a warm hot tub, so I can be in nature for an hour. So yeah,
Mm.
I just kind of try and maintain myself and catch if I'm getting off balance or stressed faster, so that I reset and then I can come back.
Yeah, it reminds me of what we were talking about that once you hit a frequency and then you drop back into the lower frequency, all of a sudden everything out of alignment becomes more noticeable. So if you can
Yes.
hold that, then it's like I think of it as like fine tuning my antenna, that I'm listening better. The more I clear, the better I'm listening to myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and a big part of that for me, I don't know if this is true for you or anyone listening, but a big part of that for me has been working with my mind and not letting my mind give me a hard time.
Yes.
I had to catch the part of
Yeah.
me that would kind of be hard on myself. Well, you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't have had that, or oh, you had, a few beers the other night and you shouldn't, I had a lot of shoulds. And
Mhm.
and I first thing was like, no, I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm just going to live and I'm just going to see what happens. And so long as I'm paying attention to, so long as I'm keeping my awareness open with what I'm doing and what I'm choosing to do, then I'll be curious. I'll be like, oh, that's interesting that you've gone to, I noticed on the tour in the last week or so, because it was quite a lot of energy expenditure, and because I was in and out of all of these environments, I started to eat far worse food in like the last week and a half, and it was because I was looking for pleasure and comfort. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. But I didn't beat myself up about it. I was like, okay, this wouldn't be your norm, but you are not in a normal circumstance. So I think you've also got to give yourself a break. There are periods of life where we're a bit more stressed, or there are hard things happening, and so a lot of it, I think, is learning to remember that we're all doing the best we can every given day. And if there's something we don't like about what we're doing, hold an intention that you're going to change it, but you might not be ready to change it today. So go,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to change this. Today's not the day. Something in me doesn't feel ready, but I'm going to keep remembering that I'm going to change this, and be compassionate, because it's some part of us that's been active either for a while or is trying to leave us, but it doesn't want to leave us overnight. It might need several attempts over a year. So
Hmm.
I try
Hmm.
and, within that, back to your point about celebration, I also try and catch the parts of me that have done really well. I kind of go, wow, Lee, 9 years ago, had no relationship to fitness like you do now. And
Yeah.
that was won over repetition and, sometimes not wanting to do it. And yeah, so, and sometimes not forcing myself into it either. I'm like, no, today's not a day to force anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, you just have to celebrate what you have become, as much as you might have ideas about what you need to become next. The Z's said something at Soul Magic last year that really was so helpful. They said, Many of you have a judgment about the side of you that you think isn't very good, but you don't realize how it's that part of you that you think is a bit deficient or a bit less than is in direct proportion and balancing the part of you that you can see is doing really good things in the world. So you mustn't diminish the opposite end of your line, because then you're also diminishing the part of you that's doing good. And I was like, oh, I'd never thought of it in that relationship. And that was a good mind shift for me too.
Yeah. And just to, yeah, it makes it to be gentler with ourselves and to
Yeah.
say, well, okay, maybe I'm going to have whatever, a couple beers, as you said, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what I need right now. And
Because a
that's,
lot of it is the frequency we approach it with. You know, I've met people who are really controlling about their bodies and they're not happy. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily, or they're fearful. And equally, I've met people who are like, oh, I just do whatever I want. And they're really
Right.
happy. So I think there's a lot of messaging in our society too about what we should be. And I think we are the ones deciding what we should be.
Yes.
And I think I'm definitely guilty of being one of those people who would look at all these outer messages and go, oh, I should be more of that. Or, and you know, I've either got too old or I'm now too experienced to play that game anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see that the polarity of that, of to say, okay, a person who seeks comfort when they are stressed is also a person who is comforting,
Yeah, good
values
point.
comfort. So
Good
there
point.
you go.
Good point. And also, you know, like I kind of how what I shared on the tour, you know, I'm able to maintain a good kind of baseline of health when I'm
Hmm.
at home. It's much harder when you're traveling. It's much harder when you're doing that kind of tour. And so I just went, okay, well, this is how I'm coping with the last 2 weeks, and I will
Yeah.
reset things when I get home. And yeah, 2 or 3 weeks later, after I got home, I was ready to reset. So you always have to trust yourself that you know we go through waves and you know, we'll go up and down, but we'll always bring the ship back around.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Lee. Awesome conversation. I'm so grateful for the time. And I feel like
Oh,
we kind of went the whole gamut. We like went far in a field and all the way and then back again. So
well,
thank
thank
you.
you, thank you. You hold, you know, when I met you backstage, how long ago that was? That 2 months ago or
I
six
think
weeks
so.
ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have such a lovely heart energy and frequency, and what I heard about you from the Z's makes total sense. So I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for having me and inviting me to be here.
Thank you very much. All right. We'll talk again soon. Thank you, Lee.
Bye bye.